The human who refused to kneel. The golden palace of Verelia sparkled under the twin moons. It was the night of the great offering ceremony, where warriors from across the galaxy came to show respect to the royal family. The huge hall was filled with shining lights, banners, music, and nobles dressed in colorful clothes. Alien species of all shapes and colors knelt one by one before the royal throne. At the center of the throne sat Empress Chivora, tall and proud with glowing red eyes and silver blue skin. Beside her stood her daughter, Princess Terelia, known for her beauty and sharp mind. Her golden armor shimmered as she stood with grace and pride, her long hair braided with gems. A human walked forward. He was the only one in the hall not wearing fancy clothes, just a simple dark vest, metal boots, and a long scar across his cheek. His name was Commander Jalen Voss, a warrior from Earth. He had come as part of an agreement between the Human Federation and the Verelian Empire. Thirke, guards whispered. Nobles stared. Terelia tilted her head slightly. Everyone expected him to kneel, but he didn't. Jalen stood tall. His eyes didn't move away from the throne. His hands were by his side, calm but strong. The room went silent. One Verelian noble shouted, "Kneel before the Empress, human." Jalen didn't move. Another shouted, "This is a sacred ceremony." Still he stood. Finally the Empress raised her hand. Silence returned. She looked at Jalen with cold eyes. "Do you not understand our traditions?" Jalen spoke calmly. "I respect your traditions, but I kneel only for truth, not for show." The hall gasped. Princess Terelia stepped forward, her eyes burning. "You insult my people before the entire galaxy. Why are you here, human?" Jalen met her eyes. "Because I have earned the right to choose." Terelia narrowed her eyes. "Choose what?" He said just one word. "You." The room exploded with noise. Nobles shouted. Guards stepped forward. The Empress stood in shock. Princess Terelia blinked, stunned. "What? What did you say?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. Jalen nodded. "As part of the peace agreement, the champion who helped save the Verelian fleet in the Battle of Red Echo has the right to take a royal partner as his reward. I am that champion, and I choose you." Terelia took a step back. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her heart was racing. "You're taking me as your wife? Really?" Jalen didn't smile. He didn't speak again. He just looked into her eyes with quiet strength. Behind the throne, the Empress whispered something to her advisors. The guards lowered their weapons. The ceremony was ended early. Terelia was led to her private chamber. Her hands were shaking. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. "Why me?" she whispered. He could have chosen riches. He could have chosen land. Why did he choose me? Outside her chamber, a message came through the wall speaker. "Princess, the human is waiting. He has asked to speak with you alone." Her heart skipped. She stood, straightened her armor, and opened the door. Jalen stood there in silence. The hallway was empty except for them. "I didn't ask for this," she said quickly. "I'm not some gift." "I know," Jalen replied. "Then why did you choose me?" Jalen looked around, then took a step closer. His voice was low. "Because when I stood in that hall, you were the only one not afraid. The others were looking down. You were looking straight at me." Terelia didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that. "I didn't want a prize," he said. "I wanted someone who saw the truth, someone who didn't pretend." "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I'd like to." Her chest tightened. Her world, the rules, the power, the crown, suddenly felt too heavy. Before she could answer, alarms rang across the palace. A royal guard shouted, "Emergency! There's been an explosion near the outer wall." Jalen turned quickly, hand on his sidearm. "Stay close to me," he said. Terelia, confused but curious, followed him. And so, their strange and unexpected story began. Not with love, not with hate, but with a choice that would change both their worlds forever. Royal chains or true choice? The golden hallway shook as the sound of the distant explosion echoed through the palace walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The glowing orbs that lit the corridor flickered, casting shadows across the marble floor. Princess Terelia's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. She wasn't just a royal. She had been trained in strategy and survival since she was a child. But nothing had prepared her for this human, Commander Jalen Voss, and the chaos his choice had caused. Jalen moved ahead, checking corners with the sharp eyes of a soldier. His hand stayed on the blaster at his belt. Terelia followed, her mind racing. Her bodyguards had disappeared after the explosion. She was alone with him, alone with the man who had just declared her his wife, before the entire empire. "How do I know you didn't plan this attack?" she asked sharply. Jalen looked over his shoulder, his voice calm. "If I wanted to kidnap you, I'd be halfway to my ship by now." Terelia hated that his logic made sense. "Then what's happening?" "Looks like someone didn't want us to leave that ceremony alive." She frowned. "You think someone in the court planned this?" Jalen nodded. "That's usually where betrayal starts. Not outside. Inside. They moved through Secret Service tunnels beneath the palace. Terelia led the way. She had used these tunnels as a child to sneak away from her guards. The walls were tight, the air dry. As they turned a corner, they heard voices, low, hurried, and not speaking in any known Varelian tongue. Jalen raised a hand. "Wait." He pressed his ear to the wall. "That's not your royal guard." "No," Terelia said slowly. "That's the Shadow Tongue, a mercenary group only hired in secret. They're here for you," Jalen whispered. She looked at him. "Then why are you still here?" He looked her in the eye. "Because I don't walk away from people who are in danger, especially not my future wife." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't say that like you mean it." "I do." She didn't know if she hated his confidence or found it strange and warm. But before she could answer, Jalen grabbed her wrist and pulled her back behind a wall. A silent dart flew past, hitting the stone where her head had just been. She gasped. 3 dark figures rushed in, tall, masked, with curved weapons glowing red. Jalen moved like lightning. With one hard kick, he slammed the nearest merc into the wall. Another swung at him, but he ducked and fired his blaster from below. The third went for Terelia. But the princess wasn't helpless. With a twist of her wrist, her bracelet unfolded into a sharp energy whip. She cracked it forward, slicing, across the enemy's chest. He dropped, groaning. They both stood breathing hard, backs against the tunnel wall. "You fight better than I expected," Jalen said with a small grin. "I trained with generals," she replied, wiping blood off her lip. "I'm not some fragile bride." Jalen chuckled. "Didn't think you were." They found an old storage chamber deep beneath the palace, a hidden room filled with unused machines and old scrolls. Jalen sealed the door behind them. For now, they were safe. Terelia sat on a crate, brushing her hair back, her face serious. "You still haven't answered me." "About what? Why did you choose me?" "I need the full truth, not some poetic line." Jalen took a deep breath. "I've fought in 6 wars," he said. "I've seen planets burn, watched children cry over the bones of their homes. Every time it was caused by people in power making selfish decisions. But during the Battle of Red Echo, I saw you." Terelia looked at him, unsure. "You were on the comm screen, arguing with your own generals, trying to protect refugees. You were ready to disobey your own mother to save lives. That stayed with me." He leaned forward. "When they told me I could choose a reward, I thought of riches, ships, technology, but then I thought of you. Not because you're beautiful, not because you're royal, but because you're different." Terelia's heart stirred. No one had ever seen her like that. They only saw her title, her power, or her looks. Not her decisions. Still, she wasn't ready to trust him. "You speak well, human. But I know how the game works. A royal wife means you get political power, influence over decisions." Jalen shook his head. I'm not here to rule your people. Then, what are you here for? He walked to the center of the room, picking up an old Varelian star map. He placed it gently on the table. To stop what's coming. She stood beside him and stared at the map. He pointed to a system marked in red. This is Seraphon's Rift. 2 weeks ago, my scouts found a secret fleet hiding in the nebula. Not human, not Varelian. Something older. Terrelia's eyes widened. That region is off limits. Even the Empire doesn't patrol it. They're building something, and they're afraid of only one thing, us joining forces. He looked at her again. You being my wife isn't about marriage. It's about sending a message that humans and Varelians won't be divided anymore. Terrelia stepped back. Her mind was spinning. Her whole life had been about duty, image, power. But this man spoke of unity, of a greater fight, of something beyond their old games, and then the chamber door beeped. Jalen grabbed his weapon. They found us. The door cracked open and a figure stepped in. It wasn't a guard, it was Lady Nerissa, her mother's closest advisor. She looked furious. You were warned, Princess, she said coldly. If you bond with this human, you will lose your claim to the throne. Terrelia's hand trembled. Jalen whispered, Your choice. Terrelia looked at Lady Nerissa, then at Jalen, and then at the star map glowing softly between them. The assassins at midnight. The door shut behind Lady Nerissa with a loud clang. Her words still echoed in the hidden chamber. If you bond with this human, you will lose your claim to the throne. Princess Terrelia stood frozen, her hands curled into fists, her jaw clenched. The pressure of the crown, the pride of her people, the heavy chains of tradition. All of it squeezed her heart. And yet, the one thing she couldn't stop thinking about was the way Jalen had looked at her. Not as a trophy, not as a symbol, but as someone he truly saw. Jalen stayed silent, standing a few steps behind her, watching. He knew the weight of this moment. I need air, she finally said. Without another word, she led him out through a side tunnel, away from the danger, and deep into the outer gardens of the palace. The midnight sky of Virelia shimmered with 2 moons and a swirl of purple stars. Strange glowing plants lit up the path as they walked. The palace behind them looked peaceful. But they both knew peace was a lie. I never imagined I'd lose everything because of one human, she whispered, voice sharp but trembling. You haven't lost anything, Jalen said softly. You're just finally free to choose. She turned to him. Free? I was born with a destiny. Every step of my life was planned. I'm a princess, Jalen. I don't get to choose. You just did, he replied. You walked away from that chamber, from your mother's advisor. That was your choice, she stared at him. And now what? Do I run, hide, or fight? Before Jalen could answer, a sharp whizzing sound cut through the air. Thwip! A glowing dart flew past Terrelia's ear and struck the tree behind her. It hissed and melted the bark. Jalen shoved her to the ground, rolling with her behind a stone bench. Snipers, he hissed. They heard movement in the trees. Shadows slipped through the glowing branches. They were surrounded. Get down, Jalen said, pulling out a small spherical device from his belt. He pressed the center. A quick pulse burst from it, sending out a momentary EMP field, disrupting nearby electronics, including cloaking tech. Suddenly, 6 black-armored assassins became visible in the garden, their stealth suits flickering. Each one held long daggers and plasma pistols. Terrelia pulled out her energy whip again, her eyes fierce. They're my mother's shadow guard, she said. They don't leave survivors. Then let's make sure we're not the ones left behind, Jalen growled. The garden turned into a battleground. One assassin lunged at Jalen. He blocked the strike with his cybernetic arm, grabbed the attacker's wrist, twisted, and slammed him into the stone wall. Terrelia spun, cracked her whip in an arc of blue light, knocking 2 guards back. But they kept coming. One managed to fire a bolt straight at her chest. Jalen dove in front of her, taking the hit to his shoulder. He grunted, staggered, but stayed standing. You're hit, she cried. Just a scratch, he said through clenched teeth, blood seeping from his armor. Trelia's heart skipped. No one, not even her own royal guards, had ever risked their life like that for her. As more assassins closed in, Jalen threw a smoke bomb. The garden filled with thick gray mist. He grabbed her hand. This way. They ran blindly through the fog. Branches tore at their arms. The sound of footsteps chased them. They found the hidden entrance to a forgotten tower deep in the palace grounds, sealed long ago after a royal scandal. Terelia pressed her hand against the old stone. The wall shimmered and opened with a hiss. They slipped inside and the door closed behind them. Silence. Only their breathing filled the darkness. Inside the tower they found themselves in an old chamber full of dust and old Varelian relics. Broken statues, faded banners, forgotten swords. Jalen fell against the wall, groaning in pain. Terelia rushed to him. "Let me see the wound," she said. "It's nothing." She pulled open his vest anyway. The plasma burn on his shoulder was deep. Her fingers trembled, but she cleaned it using the herbs stored in the emergency med kit nearby. "You're lucky I studied healing rituals," she muttered. Jalen smirked weakly. "You really do everything, huh?" "I was raised to serve the Empire. That included knowing how to save the people I command." "You're not commanding me," he said gently. "No," she whispered, her eyes meeting his. "You chose to protect me, even when you didn't have to." The room went quiet. Terelia sat beside him, still touching his arm. Her voice dropped. "Why me, Jalen? You saw me once. You don't know what I've done. I've made choices. I've stood by as others were hurt. I'm not pure. You're real," he said. "And I trust real." A silence grew between them, full of something deeper than words. Then Terelia looked away, voice firm again. "My mother wants me dead. She thinks I'm a threat now. If I'm not under her control, she'll eliminate me." "She's scared," Jalen said, "because you're stronger than her. I don't feel strong. You just fought 6 assassins and treated a plasma wound in a tower that hasn't been touched in decades. I think you're stronger than you know." She blinked away sudden tears. He stood, despite the pain, and looked out the cracked window of the tower. Below, he saw more movement. Soldiers searching the gardens. "We'll need to leave soon," he said, "before the next wave comes." "And go where?" she asked. He looked back at her. "Where you're free. Where we decide what happens next." Trelia stood beside him. She touched the old banner on the wall. It was her great-grandmother's crest. A time before the current empress. A time when the throne was chosen, not inherited. "Then I won't run," she whispered. "Not anymore." Jalen looked at her, surprised. "I want to face them," she said. "Not as a prisoner, but as the future of Virelia." Outside, the soldiers spread across the land. Inside the tower, a princess and a human made a silent vow. This was no longer about marriage, no longer about titles. It was about taking back destiny. Together. Secrets beneath the throne. The sky over. Virelia was quiet, but the palace below was boiling with tension. Patrol ships circled overhead. Shadow guards prowled the gardens. The Empress had declared a containment breach to the public, but everyone knew it meant only one thing. The princess had vanished, and the human was with her. Inside the forgotten Royal Tower, deep in the West Wing ruins, Terelia stood facing a wall, her fingers brushing over the cracks in the stone. Her heart beat fast. She wasn't sure if it was fear or something else. Jalen sat behind her, resting but alert. His arm was bandaged, his blaster ready. "You're sure about this?" he asked quietly. Terelia didn't answer at first. She pressed her palm against the wall. With a soft hum, a panel lit up. Ancient Varelian script glowed beneath her touch. A mechanical voice whispered, "Royal DNA confirmed. Vault access granted." The wall hissed and slid open, revealing a hidden spiral staircase leading downward into the darkness. Jalen stood, watching her carefully. Where does this go? Terelia looked back at him, her voice steady. To a place only the royal bloodline can enter. A place where truths were buried and lies were born. They descended slowly, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The air was colder now. The light from Terelia's palm glowed with a soft blue hue, activating ancient crystals in the walls. At the bottom of the stairs was a massive door. Not metal, not stone. It looked like it was made from living bone fused with technology. Strange symbols pulsed across it. I thought this place was just a legend, she whispered. What is it? Jalen asked. Terelia took a deep breath. The original throne chamber, from before the first empress. The founders didn't rule through fear. They ruled through knowledge. She placed both hands on the door. A soft hum vibrated through the floor. The door began to open slowly, revealing a massive underground hall. Inside were rows of glowing memory pillars, floating cylinders filled with liquid light. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Jalen stepped forward. What is this? Truth, Terelia said. Every royal generation stored their secrets here. Hopes, fears, betrayals. They believed in preserving the past for those brave enough to face it. She reached for one of the pillars. Her fingers touched the surface and images began to swirl inside. A hologram burst from it. A younger Empress Shivora appeared. Not proud, not powerful, afraid. They've come from Seraphon's rift, her voice said. They call themselves the Kashara. They offered us power, longevity. But in return, we had to erase all records of their existence. No one must know. To protect the bloodline, I've made the deal. They'll leave us alone, so long as the humans are kept divided from us. Jalen's eyes narrowed. So she's been working with them. For decades. Terelia was shaking. My mother lied to everyone. The peace she claimed to create, it was built on shadows. They activated more pillars, one after another. Each one showed deals, betrayals, assassinations ordered in secret. Even the bonding law, the one Jalen used to claim Terelia, was not a reward. It was a trap, designed to quietly remove threats. She hoped you would claim someone, Terelia whispered, so she could brand you as a manipulator and execute you. And if the princess was the one taken, Jalen's voice was quiet. She gets rid of her rebellious daughter and makes humans look like invaders. Terelia staggered back, disgusted. I was just a piece on her board. Not anymore, Jalen said firmly. He stepped toward her and held her hands. You said you wanted to face her. But now we do it with truth in our hands. Suddenly the chamber lights flickered. A high-pitched alarm sounded. They turned toward the stairwell. Footsteps. Many. She's found us, Terelia said, eyes narrowing. Jalen activated his blaster. How many exits? Only one, she replied. We'll have to make our own. Using a hidden side passage behind the memory pillars, they escaped just seconds before Empress guards stormed the vault. They moved. Through ancient tunnels that hadn't seen footsteps in a century, dust clung to the air. Cracked statues of long-dead rulers lined the path. At last they came out in a storage wing near the central data tower of the palace. There, Terelia had a plan. She turned to Jalen, eyes blazing. We upload the truth, all of it, to every screen across Varelia. If my mother rules by fear, let the people see her fear the truth. Jalen smiled. Now you sound like a real leader. She grabbed his hand. We do it together, but the Empress wasn't waiting anymore. As they moved toward the data core, they were ambushed. Lady Nerissa stood at the entrance, flanked by black-armored guards. Her face was pale, her eyes furious. You've gone too far, Princess. Terelia stepped forward. The people have the right to know. Nerissa raised a weapon. You will come with us or die here. Jalen moved in front of her. Over my dead body. Nerissa smiled coldly. That was the plan. Suddenly the room filled with blinding blue light. A pulse from the memory crystal Terelia carried. It struck Nerissa's weapon, disabling it. Confused, the guards hesitated. Terelia stepped onto the broadcast platform. Her voice rang across the system. I am Princess Terelia of Virelia, daughter of Empress Shivora. Today I bring you truth and a choice. You were told that humans were invaders. You were told that I was taken. But I was not stolen. I was chosen. And I have chosen the truth. Images filled the skies. Cities. Villages. Ships. All began receiving the secrets from the vault. Panic spread in the palace. Noble houses began to argue. Loyalists turned. Soldiers paused. And above it all, the people saw one thing clearly. A princess standing beside a human, not in chains, but hand in hand. The trial of bonding. The palace was no longer silent. Screens across the empire glowed with the truth. Cities buzzed with shock. Markets stopped. Warships paused in orbit, waiting for new orders. The people of Virelia were no longer blind. But inside the palace, in the sacred hall of unity, Princess Terelia stood still. Dressed not in royal armor, but in a simple dark robe, the clothing of one who seeks judgment. Her glowing silver eyes stared ahead at the ancient altar of Virelian law. Beside her stood Jalen Voss, the human commander who had shaken an empire by choosing her. Across the hall sat the Elder Circle, 12 ancient leaders, keepers of law, older than the Empress herself. They had not been called in over 100 years, but now they were awake. Because what had happened between Terelia and Jalen had triggered the most serious test of all. The trial of bonding. According to ancient law, any royal who tried to bond with a non-Virelian had to pass a sacred trial. It was not a fight with weapons, but a test of spirit, trust, and unity. If they failed, the bond would be broken forever and the outsider cast out or executed. Terelia knew the risk, but she stood firm. I accept the trial, she declared. I will face what our ancestors faced, so that our future is chosen, not forced. Jalen glanced at her, impressed. Her voice did not shake. Her back was straight. She was no longer just a princess. She was becoming something more. The elders gave no reply. Instead, they raised their staffs. Energy swirled around the altar. A blinding white sphere appeared in the center. A voice echoed in the chamber. To bond across species, across blood and history, you must first walk the path of the joined. Face the memory of fear. Face the echo of doubt. Face the fire of loss. And survive, not alone, but together. The floor cracked open beneath them. Terelia and Jalen fell into the light. They woke in darkness. Not real darkness, but one made of thought and pain. They were inside the bonding illusion, a mental world shaped by their deepest fears. A place where no lie could survive. Terelia looked around. Where are we? Jalen answered. Somewhere we don't control. Suddenly, the darkness shifted. They stood in the middle of a battlefield, smoke everywhere, bodies lying in silence. Terelia gasped. She recognized it. This is the war on Karsus Prime, she whispered. I was there. From the fog, she saw herself, a younger version, standing still as Virelian warships fired on helpless towns. No, she whispered. I gave that order. I was told it would save lives, but it killed hundreds. Jalen stepped forward. You were a soldier. You believed what they told you. But I didn't ask questions, she said, voice cracking. I thought loyalty meant silence. The ghost version of herself turned to her. You're not worthy of love, it hissed. You're a killer hiding behind a crown. Jalen stepped between them. No, he said. She's not hiding. She faced the truth. She chose to reveal it. She's stronger than you. The ghost dissolved. Terelia breathed hard. That was my fear. My guilt. Then it's time for mine, Jalen said softly. The world shifted again. Now they stood in a ruined human city, Earth in flames. Alien ships circled above. Jalen fell to his knees. This is my home, he said, before I joined the war. Terelia saw the scene clearly. A younger Jalen pulled his injured sister from rubble. But he was too late. She died in his arms. From the shadows, a figure appeared, his old commander. "You left your post," the ghost said. "You could have saved more. But you chose family." Jalen gritted his teeth. "I tried. I did what I could." "Still not enough," the ghost said. "You don't deserve peace." Terelia stepped forward. "She died because war took everything. But you lived. You became someone who protects, even strangers. Even me." The ghost faded. Jalen stood, eyes moist, heart heavy, but lighter than before. They had passed the first two trials. Then came the final test. They appeared in a vast white room. No shadows, no sound. A voice echoed, "Now, face the fire of loss. You must walk separate paths. If you do not find each other in time, the bond ends here." Without warning, Terelia vanished. Jalen was alone. Terelia found herself in a frozen wasteland. Cold winds bit at her skin. Snow blinded her eyes. "Jalen!" she shouted. No answer. She walked, slipped, fell. Her body shivered, but she kept going. Each minute, the storm grew stronger. Her legs trembled. Her hope faded. Then she remembered his words. "You just did. You walked away from her control." She stood again. "I will find him," she whispered, "even if I die trying." Jalen, meanwhile, was trapped in a burning city. Flames everywhere. His skin blistered. Sirens screamed. "Where are you?" he shouted. "Terelia!" He covered his mouth, pushed through the smoke. Every step forward felt like dragging his soul through fire, but he remembered her words. "We do it together." He pushed harder, and finally, on the edge of the two illusions, the fire and snow met. They saw each other, and ran. Without hesitation, they embraced. Light exploded around them. The trial dissolved. They opened their eyes, back in the Hall of Unity. The elders stood one by one. They raised their staffs. The oldest among them spoke. "The bond has passed, not through blood, not through politics, but through pain, trust, and choice." Terelia turned to Jalen. He was already looking at her. She whispered, "We made it." He smiled. Together. But as they stepped down from the altar, a guard rushed in. "Your Highness, the Empress. She's coming. With the full fleet." Terelia's eyes narrowed. "She plans to stop us before the people rise." Jalen touched her shoulder. "Then it's time we rise first." Rebellion in the stars. The war drums of Virelia had been silent for decades. But now they thundered once more. From the great black citadel in the capital sky tower, Empress Sivora stood like a storm in human form. Her long cloak flowed behind her, and her eyes burned brighter than the twin suns. The truth was out. The people knew about the Kashara, about her secret deals, about the lies. But she wasn't ready to surrender power. "Prepare the royal fleet," she ordered. "We erase them both, my daughter and the human she dares to love." Above the planet, hundreds of warships roared to life. The rebellion had begun. In the hidden chambers below the palace, Princess Terelia and Commander Jalen Voss stared at the star maps lighting up the central command table. The room buzzed with the sounds of rebel officers, human and alien, working side by side for the first time in history. Jalen pointed to a location in orbit. "The Empress's fleet will move here first. She'll try to block transmissions from the Truth Tower." Terelia nodded. "We'll need a distraction, and a leader to draw her attention." "You mean a target?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Me." Jalen looked at her. "She'll fire on you without hesitation." Terelia met his eyes. "Then let's give her a reason to hesitate." That night, Terelia stood before the largest live broadcast in Virelian history. Her image filled the skies, projected across planets, moons, spaceports, even inside royal warships. "I am Princess Terelia of Virelia, daughter of Empress Sivora. But I no longer follow her. I do not seek war. I seek freedom, not just for myself, but for every voice she tried to silence. I have bonded with a human, not because of politics, not because of reward, but because love cannot be controlled by empires. Her voice trembled, but not with fear, with power. If you stand for truth, do not follow the Empress. Follow your heart. Join us. In orbit, the Empress watched the broadcast. She smashed her staff against the floor. Fire on her now. The warships locked weapons on the capital, but something unexpected happened. Half of them didn't obey. On dozens of decks, captains hesitated. Crews looked at each other, and then one by one they turned their ships around, pointing not at the rebellion but at the Empress. In the rebel hangar, Jalen prepared for battle. He wore a new suit, part human combat armor, part Varelian tech. His cybernetic arm gleamed with energy, synced to their command systems. Terelia stepped beside him in her royal flight armor, black and gold, redesigned with the crest of her great-grandmother, the last ruler who had led with justice. "You ready to lead a rebellion?" Jalen asked. Terelia smirked. "Only if you're flying beside me." He nodded. Always. The rebel fleet launched. Hundreds of ships from outlaw sectors, abandoned colonies, and forgotten moons joined the battle. They were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Because this wasn't just a fight, it was a cause. The space above Varelia turned into chaos. Blue laser beams cut through the black. Explosions flashed like lightning. The Empress's loyalists fought hard, but they were split, confused. Some turned sides mid-battle. Some fled. Terelia's voice echoed across comms. "Target the command relays, break her communication net." Jalen and his squad raced through enemy fire, blasting signal towers and disabling control nodes. His ship moved like a shadow, precise and deadly. Then the Empress appeared, aboard her flagship, the Crimson Wreath, a massive war cruiser bristling with cannons. "She's targeting the Truth Tower," an officer cried. "If she destroys it, everything we shared will be lost," Terelia said. "We stop her here," Jalen replied. They flew straight toward the flagship, dodging heavy fire. Terelia led the charge. Her ship took hits, shields flashing red, but she didn't turn back. Inside the command ship, Shivora watched them coming. "Fools. You cannot break the bloodline." She prepared to fire the main cannon, aimed directly at the rebellion's heart, but just before she fired, a small figure entered the bridge. A royal guard? No. Lady Nerissa. She pointed a weapon at the Empress. "Your time is over." Shivora spun in shock, but it was too late. A single blast. The Empress fell. With her death, her loyal fleet surrendered. Terelia's forces landed at the central tower, taking control without resistance. Crowds poured into the streets, cheering not in fear, but in hope. In the capital square, Terelia and Jalen stood before the people, no longer fugitives, no longer hidden. "Today," she said, "we begin again, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as partners in peace." The people knelt, not in fear, but in respect. That night, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Jalen stood under the stars. Terelia joined him. She looked up at the same sky. "You changed everything," she said. He shook his head. "You did." She smiled. "Then maybe we both did. Together." And she whispered, "Let's not wait anymore. Wife by choice, not force." The city of Lunaris Prime, the royal capital of Varelia, had never looked so alive. Where there were once banners of war, now flew symbols of peace. Where elite guards once marched with weapons, now children ran through the palace streets, waving flags marked with the symbol of unity, a joined star and flame, representing human and Varelian bond. Inside the palace walls, change had already begun. But deep within the Chamber of Crowns, under the light of the two moons, Princess Terelia stood silently. Her reflection shimmered in the ceremonial mirror. her black and gold armor replaced with a smooth white dress lined with silver threads, an ancient Varelian tradition worn only by those who chose their bond freely. Behind her, a voice spoke. Strong, warm, familiar, Jalen Voss. You look like a queen already. She smiled, meeting his reflection. I look like myself for the first time. Across the palace, preparations were in motion. The Council of 12 was being reformed. The fleet was under joint command, and for the first time in Varelian history, an open wedding ceremony was to be held, not to display power but to celebrate unity. But not everyone was ready to accept it. In the shadows of the Outer Void Temple, a secret group called the Blood Flame gathered, fanatics loyal to the fallen Empress Sivora. They believed Terelia had shamed the bloodline and that no union with a human should be allowed. Their leader, a masked elder named Koresh, held up a glowing orb. We strike tonight, he hissed. At the moment of bonding, the new queen will fall and the empire will rise again. Back at the palace as night fell, lights sparkled across the city. The bonding ceremony began. A wide platform floated in the sky high above the city. The Abbey, stars above and lights below made it feel like a dream between worlds. People gathered across rooftops and towers watching the event unfold. Holograms of the scene were broadcast to thousands of worlds. Terelia stood at the center of the platform. Jalen stepped forward, wearing formal Earth battle dress, polished, proud, and stitched with the crest of peace. The High Elder raised the staff of bonding. Do you, Princess Terelia of Varelia, accept this bond not as reward, not as law, but by your own will? Terelia looked at Jalen. I do, she said. Not as royalty, but as me. Do you, Commander Jalen Voss of Earth, take this bond, not for war, not for gain, but for love? Jalen smiled. I do, he said. Not as a soldier, as a man who finally found home. The staff glowed bright blue. Then let this be known. You are bonded, not by force, not by rule, but by choice. The crowd roared. Fireworks lit the skies. Ships honked across orbit. People across both human and Varelian systems clapped, wept, and celebrated. But in the shadows of the platform, Koresh's agents moved. 3 cloaked figures climbed the floating pillars beneath the platform. In their hands, charged pulse knives, strong enough to pierce through royal shields. One whispered, "We strike now." On the stage, as Terelia and Jalen held hands, the floor beneath them shook. Terelia's warrior senses flared. Something's wrong. Before Jalen could react, the first assassin jumped onto the stage, charging toward Terelia with a glowing blade. But she was faster. With a twist of her wrist, her ceremonial bracelet snapped into an energy shield. The blade struck it, then ricocheted, slicing the assassin's own arm. He fell, screaming. A second attacker leapt at Jalen. He blocked the strike with his cybernetic arm, then drove his elbow into the attacker's face, knocking him off the platform. The third assassin pulled a hidden detonator. No peace. He screamed. He activated the device. But then, a flash of light. From the sky, a stealth drone, sent by Lady Nerissa, swooped in and fired a disabling beam. The device sparked, then fizzled. The final attacker collapsed. Guards swarmed the platform. The danger had passed. Jalen caught his breath, looking at Terelia. You okay? She nodded, eyes fierce. They tried to take our moment, they failed. He took her hand. Then let's finish this the way we started. Together. Terelia stepped forward and raised her voice to the people. They tried to stop us tonight, not with armies, but with fear. But fear cannot stop what has already begun. We are not just human and Varelian. We are a new people, one born not of blood, but of bond. The crowd erupted with cheers. Later that night, Jalen and Terelia stood, alone at the balcony of the royal tower. The city was calm. The stars blinked above them. She looked at him. It was supposed to be a reward, remember? You were supposed to take a royal. He laughed softly. And you were supposed to resist. She leaned in closer, I didn't expect a human to change my life. And I didn't expect an alien princess to save mine. She touched his chest where his heart beat strong. No more titles, she whispered. From now on, you're not my prize. And I'm not your reward. He pulled her close. Then what are we? She smiled. We're ours. From rebellion to revelation to something greater than either of them ever imagined. The princess and the human had changed the galaxy, not with weapons, not with power, but with the courage to choose love in a world built on control.